My name is Emily Kalejs Qazilbash, and I'm a professor of practice here at Brown in the Education Department. I joined the faculty in 2019, where I was most recently in the Boston Public Schools as an assistant superintendent. In that work, I was in charge of policies to ensure that every classroom had an effective teacher and every school had an amazing principal. Now that I'm here, I still continue to work on issues related to ensuring we have an effective, diverse workforce. I started my career as a second and third grade teacher in Baltimore and then in Boston. So I've always been really grounded in how hard it is to teach, and I've had a great respect for the profession. And I've been really compelled over the years that I was getting my doctorate and also working in policy about the research about how important it is to have an amazing teacher in every classroom. And the combination of knowing how important it is and how hard it is, and that we need to continue to really think about how do we attract the teachers that our classrooms need, how do we diversify the profession, how do we find people who are committed to the career knowing that people may not stay for their entire professional lives, but how do we help them become really good in a relatively short amount of time and then really want to stay? Those are the questions that have really interested me my entire professional life, and I feel really lucky that at Brown I get to think about that work from both the research side and the practice side, thinking about how do we create policies that really help ensure that students in our classrooms have what they need to succeed. The mission of the Urban Ed Policy Program is to support graduates to enter the workforce, to be able to analyze policies and to evaluate research that examines the outcomes that students in our urban public schools are getting, and to uncover where we have problems, where we have challenges, where not all students are being exposed to the same wonderful opportunities and having the same outcomes. And the program is organized both so that they get policy analysis skills and some deep data analysis skills, and so that they learn how to actually bring that change about. So students are organized in a cohort so that they really lean on each other. This is not work that any of us can do alone, so they start to build professional relationships with peers. They have a chance to really interact with faculty members around research, around the different issues that they're discussing in class. And the other unique feature of this program is that they're doing an internship for a full school year where they are immersed in a complex educational organization where people are working to affect change, so that students in our urban public schools will have equal access to opportunities and strong outcomes. And in this internship, they get a chance to really get into the weeds and to really kind of experience the messiness of policymaking. And they get to do that in this cohort and with faculty who then help them reflect on what they're learning and where they're succeeding and where they're really hitting challenges. I teach the Urban Ed Policy students both a seminar in the fall and then again in the spring. Both of those classes are focused on, once you've gained the data analysis skills and the policy analysis skills and the other core classes of the program, how are you then going to make changes in educational organizations when you see that there are inequalities in the education that our students are receiving. In the fall, as students are getting into their internship, we're talking about such things as leadership skills that are sometimes impacted by one's identity. So gender identity, race, ethnicity, age. How are these types of facets of an identity potentially going to perceive how you are perceived as a leader or as part of a team? And then how do you control your narrative? How do you start to address some of those challenges you might encounter in the workforce? Part of that work is learning to tell your public narrative, learning to tell your story, learning to explain to people who you are and what you stand for. We spend a lot of time being very explicit about core values. Why do you do what you do? And how do you do what you're doing? And how do you explain that to people so that you're building trust and you're bringing them along with you? Our graduates are going to be leaders in the field of educational policy. We want them to have the tools to build alliances, to be able to engage with stakeholders, to be able to communicate effectively about what is not working for all of our students and how they are going to affect change. So a lot of what we do in the courses is around that communication piece. Some of the leadership skills that they're learning are more about operating in a political manner. Who are the alliances that you need to form? How do you communicate with people inside your organization and outside of your organization? How do you anticipate where there are going to be blocks, where there are going to be people who want to keep the status quo because that benefits them or benefits people who look like them? And what are they going to do about it? One of the central questions that we address throughout, frankly, both of the classes is, once you have identified the change that needs to be made as a result of your policy analysis, of the data analysis, of your experience, of your understanding of schooling, how do you make that change? What are the complicated factors that you need to take into consideration? How do you build alliances so that you have some power in a group? So a lot of the questions that we talk about are the how questions. Another thing that our graduates often encounter when they leave the program is a realization that sometimes the desires and the needs of the adults are very strong and very prevalent in educational organizations, and are sometimes in opposition to what we think as educators could be best for students. So how do you navigate that? How do you think about that as an educational policy practitioner? How do you think about talking with adults, making changes with adults when you're really keeping the needs of kids at the center? One of the unique features of the Urban Ed Policy Program is that students are working in an internship in an organization, often in Providence or Rhode Island, but in an area that they really care about or want to learn about. And they're working with a leader who is trying to make change in their particular organization related to solving some of the problems or addressing some of the issues that we know are there, related to schooling inequality, related to different opportunities, different outcomes for kids. And in this internship, students are there 10, 15 hours a week, and they're really immersed in the major work of that office, of that organization, and they're able to really engage in a significant project related to their interests, and that's important for the person who is their supervisor. During this process, they achieve wonderful things. They also bump up against barriers, and they also experience the policy ecosystem around the change that they're trying to make. And in our class, we use those experiences to really shape the conversation, have peers give feedback to each other, kind of work through some of these challenges that they're going to see once they leave the program. So I think it's really important to be able to draw on real experiences as you're trying to practice what you're going to experience after graduation. During this time, I'm drawing on the work I did in Boston Public Schools, where I saw part of my job as working with the teachers union to make sure that resources were really available at the school site through negotiations, through negotiating a contract, and through thinking about inequalities at the school site by instituting teacher hiring, principal hiring, evaluation policies that could ensure that all students had access to really strong teachers. I'm able to think about the challenges that I faced in the real world and what skills had I wish I had, before I started that job. I would find it interesting to know how the faculty and staff that we have here at Brown, how they remain hopeful in situations that are so challenging and so hard and so entrenched. I am amazed at the faculty's ability to be constructive and moving forward and to persist and to work hard every day, even though things are hard. So I would love to know what brings people the ability to stick with it and what brings them hope, even though we know we have so far to go. People who work in educational inequality see what's on a daily basis, how challenging it is, how entrenched some of our policies that are inequitable are, and how adults, humans, can really either pick sides or really make this work really challenging. And I would be interested to know what keeps the faculty and staff persisting, showing up every day, doing the hard work, doing research, teaching future policymakers and teachers about how to do this work. What keeps them positive and generative and constructive? Because I think one of my favorite parts about this department is that there's also a lot of joy among people who work here, even though they're working on really challenging issues.